Hey folks, I'm Scribblet. I'm a game mechanics specialist at the official Diablo community Discord. I write off-meta guides and help other guide writers make their stuff better by testing game mechanics and finding bugs. Find us at discord.gg/Diablo4. So I've been playing Blood this entire season, doing a really quirky off-meta build. And I've seen that Blood is kind of missing a ton of scaling. Overpower was nerfed because barbs and druids, and it made Necro's overpower horrible. So I've come up with a couple ways to fix it that aren't just simply adding zeros at the end of our numbers, because that causes other problems down the road. We're going to make some changes to Gore Quills, Rathma's Vigor, Cruer's Embrace, Bone Mages, and some accessibility options so that we can actually see the floor. So the first big change is making Gore Quills a passive skill. We're going to take the place of Transfusion. Transfusion is going to go to Gruesome Mending. And Gruesome Mending is going to be removed from the game. Now Transfusion, I haven't theory crafted all these changes you see in red, so we'll come back to this later, but there's a reason I thought of this as a useful thing. But back to Gore Quills. So if Gore Quills is a passive skill, it's going to basically work where every point of Gore Quills you put in consumes an additional blood orb. It should work with Blood Surge and do the same kind of functionality where when you cast Blood Surge, it can consume 1, 2, or 3 blood orbs to do additional blood surges from the point of the blood orbs. And this is really needed because in higher pits, having to move to pick up blood orbs, you just don't have time, and there's too many boss mechanics that prevent you from getting to the blood orbs in a time where they would be useful. Similar to the red text here, I also said it could work with Sever or Bone Spear. This could help bring up those builds, but I'm not here to talk about them. I just noticed that they're underperforming, and if they could benefit from Transfusion, if they had blood orbs, it'd be great. So Blood Lance with Gore Quills would remain functionally identical, except we'd have a free aspect slot, which would give us about 40% more damage because we could just put a damage aspect in that spot or utility aspect. Other changes to Gore Quills that are really needed to bring overpower damage for Necros up is when you overpower from Rathma's Vigor, Gore Quills doesn't. So we're just leaving a bunch of damage on the table when we auto-overpower. Every other auto-overpower mechanic that triggers, like Cruer's Embrace even, or Death Speaker's Pendant, when you overpower automatically, all of those other things overpower too. Gore Quills doesn't, and that's a problem. We're losing like 150% extra damage that should also be overpowering, doesn't. So first change is we need to make Gore Quills work with auto overpower triggers for both Blood Surge and Blood Lance. The second problem with Gore Quills is when you overpower from Rathma's Vigor and cast a Blood Lance, if you cast 3 Blood Lances and you have enough blood orbs, the third Blood Lance should overpower, and it doesn't. See, Gore Quills has a casting delay. So if I cast Blood Lance, it'll consume 3 blood orbs, give me 6 seconds of cooldown. If I cast Blood Lance again, it'll consume 3 blood orbs, and I will get another. I should fully cool down Rathma's Vigor. But the problem is, due to the casting delay of Gore Quills, by the time I go to cast my third Blood Lance, my second Gore Quills hasn't finished casting, and I don't have the trigger available. So we need to change Gore Quills so that it instantly consumes the blood orbs, but the healing and the lance casts still trickle in, because that trickle healing will keep you alive when you are face tanking the world. I realize I read this out of order, but whatever. We got the extra aspect for more damage, and if you just include the 40%, roughly 40% damage increase from an extra aspect and Gore Quills overpowering, we've increased the overpower ratio of Necromancers by 3.5x if you bothered making blood orbs, that is. And I haven't included the extra overpowers from fixing the Gore Quills triggering out of order, because we're going to do better in the next slide. So one of the problems with Rathma's Vigor is it doesn't scale. Like, these scale to the moon. Like, Shadow Blight on a two-hander is, what, 240% just, like, free damage almost? It's, like, the easiest trigger in the world to activate. And then Ossified Essence, like, this number just can get ridiculously high when you have, like, 200 plus Essence, and then Serration goes with it to just do, like, insane amount of damage. And then, like, Rathma's Vigor, you hit this number, and then it never scales past this number. And the only aspect that scales with it is Rathma's Chosen. And Kalen's Edict has a similar problem, where it basically scales off Occult Dominion. Good job. Thumbs up. But we're not here to talk about this. So we need this to scale. So the main change we want to see is if you double this number, you should double the amount of cooldown reduction you get. And it would actually be better if it was cumulative and the triggers were every 1 second for half the amount. So like, if I get a blood orb that heals me for 10,000, right? It should trigger this month and then go towards the next couple blood orbs. So if I get like 3 10,000 triggers, I can't do the math right now. But anyways, it should be cumulative. It should just grow with the amount of health and healing you receive. So if I heal for 4,700 if I heal for this number after casting a single blood lance, from healing from 3 blood orbs, I should just overpower on the next blood lance. So every single blood lance in theory could overpower if I was bothering in some way to generate blood orbs. And even with that, the scaling would only be 14x, which sounds like a lot, but it's still about 1/10 to 1/20th the damage of Blight or minions right now. So even with somehow having free blood orbs and overpowering every single attack, we'd still be like 1/10 the damage of Blight right now. So we need more scaling. So one of the ways we can get more scaling is if Bone Mages could cast Blood Lance. See, Bone Mages, I've tested it out. I took Blood Mist off my bar and put Bone Spear on my bar, and it felt awful to waste yet another slot on an ability I'm not even pressing. But my Bone Mages never died. They were full of cocaine because with Rathma's Chosen, they were attacking fast. And I didn't even press Skeleton Priest because their base damage doesn't matter. They just weren't dying because I was constantly consuming blood orbs, which was keeping them topped off. And they were just like, my screen was covered in numbers. I couldn't see shit. I loved it. So if Bone Mages could cast Blood Lance, we'd get like another like Blood Lance cast, like 1.75 Blood Lance casts a second, somewhere around that number with Occult Dominion. And that would be more single target scaling, which is what we need in the pit. We need to kill bosses. So give us Blood Lances. I think Bone Mages should just be able to cast core skills. Probably all of them other than Blight, because I think that would be overpowered just looking how Blight works right now. But Sever could probably benefit from this too. And this is why I mentioned the thing earlier, where if Transfusion works with Blood Orbs, it would allow Bone Spear and Sever to... If other abilities could proc Transfusion, it could allow Sever and Bone Spear to keep their Bone Mages up and possibly allow those builds to use Bone Mages efficiently, which would be cool. Another thing to consider is adding Overpower to Skirmishers. I'm never going to use Skirmishers over Reapers, but theoretically, if I wanted to spec into like Cult Leader, I could run the only build that scales Cult like Warrior damage, and that would just be kind of cool. Just to have a spec that scales warrior damage, but you'd probably need some ridiculous amount of like overpower scaling, not this 50x, because it would have to be insane for this to be worthwhile. But maybe there's a theoretical, Cult Leader Blood Skirmisher overpower build that you could do. Cool. Also, I just love this effect. I never have to worry about Decrepify on my bar. Everything's just always decrepified. if I was switching to Bone Mages, I would like that if the Blood Lance cast by the Bone Mage, it counts as my Blood Lance, not the Bone Mage's. But if you could also make it apply Blood Moon Breaches, that would be great. Just make sure that I don't curse myself if I was using Mutilator Plate. That'd be dumb. And that's currently a bug in the game. Alright, so if we're shooting a bunch of Blood Lances out with mages, if we're shooting a bunch of Blood Lances here, we need an infinite amount of Blood Orbs, more than is possible to get. But we can start getting a lot more Blood Orbs by switching to these gloves. Now currently, the way it feels to play with these gloves is they're completely blank and void of stats. They just happen to have these really cool effect where if you're running Embalmer on a neck, if you're running Fueled by Death and Flesh Eater, you just get them for free all the time. You get all of the Blood Orbs in the world. It's amazing. But the problem is, it's a completely blank item. These stats don't exist. And I think the designers had some really good ideas for what these stats are, like plus core skill damage. Okay. But like, it's thematically, they just didn't take it far enough. So I'm going to explain what it needs to make this item good. And it's not just for Blood Lance that this item would be good. This item would actually possibly have a place in like Bone Spirit builds and Bone Spear builds, because Cruor's Embrace becomes a generator. You see this effect, when you run it with Grim Harvest, you basically get like up to 108 essence prior to essence regen or resource generation ability. So you're going to get like 150 essence if you're at corpse cap. So if you're running like Army of the Dead Bone Spirit, you push this button and every 3 seconds you get like 150 essence. That's a cool thing to do. All right, now for the stats, this needs max life. There's Blood wants max life on every single piece of gear, and max life is basically overpower damage. So the designers were like, yeah, it should help with overpower, but you know what helps with overpower? Max life. And since like Doombringer is kind of thematically like the end game blood item that scales off max life, not having max life on this is dumb. So yeah, put max life on this, please. Now here we need either crit chance or attack speed, but I'm going to say crit chance because in the current meta where there is only 3 modifiers on gear, balancing your stuff is hard. And the current way players interact with crit chance is the same way they interact with resist all and armor. If you are running a crit build, you get crit cap, and then you balance the rest of your gear. Nothing else matters. You don't get to play like the game until you're crit capped. Just like you don't run around with 8,000 armor. You get to armor cap and then balance your gear. You get to resist attack and then balance your gear. As long as we have things like Gore Quills in the game where to get this massive damage scaler and sacking Iron Golem, as long as those are in the game, you just have to be crit capped. And in order to have fun and enjoy the mechanics of the game of balancing gear, not having crit on your gloves is like horrible, because to not have crit on your gloves means you have to get crit on 2 different rings to make up for the crit you lose on gloves, since gloves roll higher on crit than rings. So this just needs crit chance to be a valid item in the current meta. So just put crit chance on this, make everyone's day, make them have more fun playing the game by being able to balance other items. This also needs core skills rather than blood surge, because I know you put core damage on here because you're probably already seeing what I'm seeing. If I am running Cruor's Embrace, I am already running 2 different core skills. In this case, in my build, I want to drop Black River and Corpse Explosion for Cruor's Embrace and Blood Surge. And in my build, I run Blood Surge. I'd be running Blood Surge, Blood Lance, and Bone Spirit. I would run 3 different core skills that are demanding my attention. So this would slot in as a core skill that would buff all of them. And this would also be useful for, if I'm running a Bone Spear build that doesn't involve Blood Harshness Curious, or Bone Spirit, yeah. Then I want core skills because I want it to also buff Bone Spirit. If I'm running Bone Spear and I want to, drop out Corpse Explosion for Blood Surge, I want core skills. There might even be a Sever build that uses this. So Crew's Embrace should be a multi-tool, and to be a multi-tool, flat damage scaling doesn't matter. It needs like percentage damage scaling, and you can get that in the form of core skills. So put plus core skills on Crew's Embrace, and a bunch of different builds will suddenly have a viable option that didn't exist before. This would be a really fun item to use. And finally, I know for whatever reason, Blizzard likes to put fluff affixes on uniques. And you know what? Okay, sure. The one thing I'd say is, we'll never benefit from plus healing on a unique as a blood build. We just can't. Like, whatever amount of plus healing that it is, it's just going to be so eclipsed by the amount of healing we're getting from blood orbs, especially with the gore curls changes that I'm wanting to put in, that we should just remove the healing. In fact, probably don't even replace it with plus essence, because this is already generating like 1 million essence every time you press Blood Surge. So if you're going to put a silly fluff affix on this, you know what you should do? You should do something like really wonky, like 5% lucky hit chance to do 20% minion attack speed. I mean, I'm not just saying that because I'm greedy, but yeah, I'm just saying that because that's actually what I want. It's so silly and it would make a lot of people mad. Just do that. But if you want a fluff aspects that's like actually wanted, that's not really that much fluff, you could put lucky hit chance vulnerability on this, and we wouldn't have to put that on our rings or our neck, and that would, like, a lot of people would just be like, oh my god. So that might be not a fluff aspect, so might be too good. So either stick with the minion attack speed or something silly, and or just go lucky hit vulnerability, and people will lose their goddamn minds about how well itemized this item is. Probably too good. Keep the minions. But Crew's Embrace has one major problem with the current functionality. I would call this a bug. Paranormal Blood Surge. Crew's Embrace will benefit from Paranormal Blood Surge, but it will not trigger a stack of Paranormal Blood Surge if you are not within range of the enemy for your base Blood Surge. So if you look at me here, this blood orb radius around me, because it doesn't hit this mob here, I don't get a stack of Paranormal Blood Surge. And if I am using Crew's Embrace as a slot-in replacement for Corpse Explosion, I might be using it on a ranged build such as Blood Lance or Bone Spear. Maybe Bone Spirit. I think Bone Spirit usually likes to be close to the enemy because travel distance and stuff. But if I'm using this as a multi-tool from range, I think it should trigger Paranormal Blood Surge as long as a single one of these explosions hits an enemy. That's just a quality of life that needs to be added. And, I put in small text down here that this damage probably needs like an actual 0 after it to be valid. It's the first time I used it, I was like, I have a full corpse pile, let me press Blood Surge, and it did under 2 million damage on like a crit. I'm like, what the fuck? It was not good. So this damage might need to be adjusted, but honestly, you could just remove the damage and I wouldn't care, because I'm using this to generate all of the blood orbs in the world with Embalmer on my neck, because I'm going to need it. And if the changes to gore quills are made, everyone's going to need it. So like, this could literally not do damage and it would still be valid. But it would be nice if it did damage and might help with bringing blood into, the same order of magnitude as minions and blight. But as you can see from this screen, there's some accessibility concerns with blood. So you see how everything is red? Well, can you spot the red that is about to kill me in the screen on the left? I am less than a second away from dying here, and I can't even see what's about to kill me. What's actually about to kill me is this thin little tiny amount of slightly red ground. That's about to just blow up, and I'm gonna die. But like, there's so much red on my screen, my brain can't even like see this. Like, this is Plagued Corpse Explosion is just like covering all of this, there's no chance at all for me to see this. So we need the accessibility option to add, like make boss mechanics and echo mechanics like neon green and neon blue, or whatever we want to set it to, because I can't see this at all. And the same here. Can you spot the slightly gray ground that is like about to kill me? No, it's right there. Yeah, you can't see it. It's completely hidden by all this random crap, and every necromancer is going to have this problem in various levels. So if I'm going to play Blood and want to face tank or play near the enemy, I need to be able to see the game, and that's really hard right now. So please give me the accessibility option to just make echo mechanics like completely different neon colors that just don't interact with anything else. Thank you. Another problem is we need to ground Lilith. Like, she needs to go to her timeout in her bedroom. Because, can you see Lilith? I can't see her. Oh, look, there's 2 pixels on my screen. Now I'm dead. So all of these screenshots are less than a second and a third apart. So Lilith has been summoned, and I saw her get summoned, but I couldn't actually see her because I didn't run far enough north, far above the boss to have Lilith on my screen. She's currently just floating up there, and I can't predict her movement if she's not on the screen. So yeah, when I fight bosses and they summon the Lilith mechanic, I just have to run to the north of the screen just in case it's this version of Lilith, because she's not even on my screen. And you can't use the floor as a indicator, because the time for this attack is almost instantaneous. The floor indicator isn't really an indicator, it's just part of the attack. So you need to ground her, put her on the floor. She can't fly that high. It's dumb. And another thing that I'd want to, this isn't really a Blood thing in particular, but you need to fix your hitboxes, because in bullet hells, the mechanics are always have smaller hitboxes than what you see, and or there's more client-side reg. So this fireball hit me. It's nowhere near me, but it went here, and then in the next frame, I warped back here and died because the client-side reg was off. In this one, I was standing still, and my brain was like, oh, I'm nowhere near that fireball. And look, it didn't actually touch me. And I died because my hitbox is up here. So to fix this, you need to make the hitboxes for the fireballs slightly smaller. You need the player hitbox to be smaller. And you need the floor hitbox to only be where the floor is. Because it should be possible for projectiles to go behind your character. Your character is standing. They are not laying on the ground. So there should be a little bit of leeway where sometimes projectiles will visually intersect your character and go behind them. That just makes sense. So if you're going to add bullet hell mechanics, please add bullet hell levels of clarity and accuracy. And if you can't get it perfectly accurate, you need to make the hitboxes significantly smaller so BS like this doesn't happen. These don't kill me. And finally, as an accessibility option that's kind of completely unrelated to what's going on right now, you need to add the ability to loot at my character's feet. I made a very angry forum post about this, but then I realized I could make an 8-page write-up on neuroscience of why my brain sees the world like this. I basically split information into 2 screens when I see it, and I track this side of the screen where my character is and where UI elements are and where fireballs are with the same part of my brain that tracks proprioception. And then I track enemies and where I'm casting on this side. So my cursor is being tracked here. My cursor isn't being tracked here. And for me to click on loot, I have to pass my cursor from this screen to this screen in my brain. And that's really stressful. And I have a whole ridiculous write-up on why that is. And it would just be solved if I could just press F and it would just loot everything around me. Please add that. If I was on a controller, that is how Interact works. And I tried binding the controller Interact, and all it did was remove my cursor, and then once my cursor wasn't on the screen, I could press F, but there's a lag and it's horrible and it doesn't work the way you want it to. So please just add the ability to loot all around me, because then I could loot with this part of my screen by, using WSD, walking here and pressing F, and I'd never need to pass my cursor location from this side of my brain to this part of my brain. Please do it. Otherwise, I'm going to end up making like a 30-minute videos on how my brain works, and it's going to be a pain to watch. So, fixing blood in Season 4. The big changes. This would become a passive skill, Gorquils. We'd fix the timing issues so that Gorquils would cast fully before your next Blood Lance. Rathlum's Vigor would gain scaling. Cror's Embrace would gain like actually good stats. Bone Mages could cast Blood Lance. We'd fix the accessibility issues. We'd fix the hitbox issues. And yeah, I think Blood could actually be viable. I still think even with all these fixes, it would be significantly behind Blight and Minions. And if this fix waits until the mid-season patch, by the time all these fixes go into place, people are already going to be way farther ahead with Blight than they are today. So it will be not enough by then, because it's already not enough by now. I don't know what would need to be changed to make this go the distance to be as good as Blight without possibly becoming overpowered. But I think these are the starting tools of what needs to be changed for Blood for it to remain interesting and viable. And I hope these changes come at the latest in the mid-season patch, or you come up with something better than what I've shown today. It would be awesome if this was like a fix in a couple weeks, but we can't all dream of everything immediately. Game design takes time. All right, well, thanks for listening to me ramble for however long it's been. Check the Discord, discord.gg/Diablo4. Feel free to check my River of the Dead build. This will clear like a pit 100 and then immediately fall off because Blood just doesn't have scaling, but it's fun. And thanks for the time. Have a great day.